StreamYard has lost
There it
access
is.
to your Facebook account, Michael Marshall. Click here to reconnect your destination. I'll take care of that one. Uh, Mike, you're going to have to do that one.
Yep.
All right. Well, all right, ladies and gentlemen, sorry that we're having some behind the scenes technical difficulties with our login information for the multiple locations in which the weekly roundtable, is disseminated amongst you, the watching and listening public. So thank you again for joining us. I'm Frank Johnson, one of your co-hosts. To my right of your screen is Michael Marshall, co-founder of the Liberty First Foundation. And below us, but not below us, is Michael Vasquez, the Dragon of the Southern Tier, New York's only truly independent, most feared and revered media personality. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us. We're hopefully waiting to see if Jeremy's going to stop by tonight. Who knows? We shall see. Facebook user Blinky is here. I know who Blinky is, even though it says Blinky. Maybe he'll make a guest appearance because Blinky might notice that there's 2 empty spots down below. All right, so just before we were coming on air, Mr. Vasquez was informing Michael and myself about something called the 15-minute city, which I have never heard of. I've never been in a city for anything less than 15 minutes, so I assume it has nothing to do with the commute. So what are we talking about, Mike?
Well, it kind of does have to do with commutes. This is an idea that came out of the WEF, World Economic Forum. And they've been pushing it since 2020. It's a French idea. French developer pushed this because of the WEF asking for it. How can I explain this in the simplest way? So what they want to do is you have a city. Think of Paris, think of New York City, think of LA, any city. And they're going to set up 1 mile long mini cities inside, literally, that you could walk 15 minutes in any direction, and that's your region. And it's enclosed. So there's no real roadways for cars inside that 1 mile zone. It's all meant to be biked or walked. And it has everything you need. So your grocery store, your movie theater, your barber shop, everything's inside that 1 mile area. So you don't need to leave. You live there, you work there, you do everything in that 1 mile zone. That's the idea. And this is because of climate change and because it's good for community. That's the concept.
All right, so
will tell you that. Go ahead.
I was saying so. I am immediately remembering the movie Escape from Manhattan or Escape from New York, Escape from LA, because what you have just described to me is a prison colony.
It's a ghetto. Yeah. When I first heard about it, and I was talking to guys I had an interview in the United Kingdom, and they introduced the idea to me because I hadn't heard about it, and which is surprising because they're trying to do it in Cleveland right now.
It's an internment camp.
Huh?
It's an internment camp.
It's a ghetto, yes, but they're trying to do it in Cleveland, in Paris, in Oxford, England. And so they described it just like I described it to you. And the first word that came out of my mouth is, it's a ghetto. This is the Warsaw, Poland ghettos. It's the same concept. The Jews don't need to go anywhere else. As long as they stay there, they have everything they need, and they can live in that one area. This is about, it's segregationist, and it's oppressive, and it hurts because every 1 mile, and there'll be multiple of these, because you can't do city the size of Paris or LA. You're not going to have one, you're going to have multiples of these. And they're all going to be little enclaves that have nothing to do with anything else. And you are disencouraged from traveling from your zone to any other zone. Mind you, they haven't addressed manufacturing, pipes, electricity, all that stuff. That's another problem. And they're going to have green spaces in there too. So how they're going to fit all this in 1 mile, anyone's guess, but they're really, really happy. And their claim to fame is that this one town in Poland actually made it work. They actually got a town in Poland where they were able to do this. Except if you actually read the information, the news media about this, the town already was 1 mile big. The town is literally a 1 mile large town.
And what's
So
the
they didn't actually do
population?
anything. They didn't change anything. They put in a couple of bike paths. So the town was already, you could already walk the entire town in 15 minutes. It's a town of 16,000 people, but it was always 1 mile large. So they didn't really change anything. So their success story is that they're doing it at a place that was already 1 mile big. But this is what they're pushing with the World Economic Forum and several other organizations. Almost every single organization involved in this is a climate change activist organization. And they're trying to push this idea. I think this is, and it's, no one in America is really paying attention except the mayor of Cleveland is like, we're going to do this in Cleveland. We're going to bring this to America. Well, when they tried to do it in Oxford, the public came up and said, don't you dare. No, we don't want this. There are massive protests saying, don't do it. And of course, anyone who protests this is obviously an evil racist. You want the world to boil and end and die. That's the answer. In fact, and I did the research. I'll show you guys just real quick in case people are wondering about this, because I looked at pretty much every article since 2020, excuse me, that's been done on this. And the answer from the supporters of this, including the guy, Carlos Morelli, who created this, is you're a troglodyte. He literally has said in several articles that if you disagree with him, you are a troglodyte. You just don't understand. You're too stupid to know what's good for you. And he isn't going to bother to even discuss it with you. And I have that article. I did the whole video on it. And they're just shouting at you. In every single, so there's only two types of articles you see about this story. It's either one, this is the best thing ever. It's an absolute utopia, and we should do this everywhere in the world. Or the second argument is, well, you don't understand. You're too stupid to know. And in this part, this is part of the entire video I did on it. This is from the AP. I believe this was in 2022. And you'll see here it says, the claim is 15-minute cities are designed to restrict people's movements, increase government surveillance, and infringe on other individual rights, which is claims that have been made in France, England, and in the United States and other places. Their answer, this is the counter, this is the argument from the supporters. The urban planning concept is simply about building more compact, walkable communities where people are less reliant on cars. That doesn't answer any of the questions in the claim. The problem is, well, this will give the government more power over you. It restricts you, either de facto or, well, rather either implicitly or de facto. They're stopping you from being able to go anywhere. They are disincentivizing you from traveling, from experiencing things. You're stuck in your area, and that's it for you. And their argument is, but it's going to be, but you can walk. You can walk throughout your entire neighborhood.
Oh, I can show you a 5-minute city that has all that. Okay. And it's right here in the United States.
Yeah. But do you see where I'm saying this is so stupid? This is how bad it is. Their only argument is, but it's good for you. Not, well, will this prevent the government from creating ghettos? Is this going to restrict freedom? But you can walk around. Climate change, that's their answer. How can you say that? What's that? That's not my screen. What's that?
That's me.
Okay.
That's New Exit, Alaska. It's a 5-minute city. You can walk 5 minutes from the airport, clear to the other side of town.
Okay.
And everything that you need is in that city. You have an airport, you have a fire department, a police department, you have a grocery store.
But at least you can move. Go ahead.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Everything is in that town. Everything that you need is in that town until the airport shuts down. And then everything you need becomes in short supply. Because if you're in a confined area and you want something that isn't there, it has to be brought to you. And if somebody decides they want to deprive you of the thing that you need or the thing that you want, they'll have the ability to do so quite easily, include not only stifling your ability for free movement, stifling your ability to communicate, to eat, to get medical assistance. Every single thing that you have, if you're confined into a small area. And when you say, well, how are they going to build it? Well, how are they going to fit all these people? Vertical. That's what they want to do. They want to make vertical cities because you can fit more people in a high rise than you can if you put them all in a single family home. And as soon as they're able to do that, it's just a simple way of being able to control the population with the flip of a switch. Because if they're going to have these 1-minute cities, there's going to be a border. And I wonder how all these people who are going to want, how are they going to justify enforcing the border of their 15-minute cities when they don't want to, enforce the border of the country that they want to build these cities in?
Well, they make it so that they're disincentivizing any cars or motorcycles, any vehicles, other than perhaps electric vehicles. Maybe that's iffy.
No, they're not going to even allow those.
Well,
okay, they want you completely reliant upon their conveniences.
Yes, but the argument, and I looked at all the research, and they're vague about even electric vehicles, but surrounding those 1-mile cities, those 15-minute cities, is they're rerouting all of the traffic. So nothing is going in, everything is going out. So again, you're disincentivized from being able to travel to other areas. They're making it incredibly difficult and under the government's control of what traffic's going in and what traffic's going out and where does it lead to. So again, it's all about control. And it's about...
Well, it's also a great way to control the population of the undesirables.
Yes.
Because like any ghetto, it's going to be designed for a specific group of people. Now, whether that people is going to be segregated by race, religion, sex, or more than likely political leanings, and eventually it's going to be the only way that these things are going to be a quote unquote success is if people are forced to live in them. Because when people do go in there and they move in there with all the high hopes and aspirations, everything is going to be so convenient, and they're told how they have to live their lives for 24 hours a day, people are going to want to leave. So what they're going to do is force you to stay or force other people to take your place who don't have a choice in where they can go.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to wind up being locations for economically depressed individuals. It's going to be basically Section 8 housing.
No, it's going to be the ghettos of Poland. It's the ghettos of Poland in the 1930s.
Okay.
Yeah, the whole idea is designed to decay.
Yes.
Well, it is.
And but it's all trapped in the idea of green energy, climate change. And if you don't agree, you're the bad guy. You're the problem, because who wouldn't want to live in this utopia other than the fact that you don't have a choice? And I'm really pissed about it. And this is coming to Cleveland, possibly coming to LA very, very near term. So this is a U.S. issue as well.
Okay. So this is off the World Economic Forum website.
Yep, been there.
Okay. And 15-minute communities do little to alter the harsh realities of economic and geographic inequity. They promise close by amenities and luxurious walkability for the well-to-do urban gentry.
Mm-hmm.
They're mainly fit for affluent urban neighborhoods and far less fit for in the disadvantaged parts of our cities. As Harvard University's Ed Glazier points out, less advantaged groups are hardly able to live their life in their own disadvantaged neighborhoods, which lack jobs, grocery stores, and amenities found in more upscale communities.
Well, the reason why he says that, why they're saying that, and they try and steer away from this because, again, it's the arguments against it. But the reality is, you need to have more people working remote jobs who have higher paying incomes to be able to afford this. Because do you know how much money it costs to redevelop New York City, LA, Cleveland? You can't afford what they're going to have to spend to create this one mile area, this ghetto. So ideally, it's going to be meant towards individuals who are going to have high scale, but eventually they're going to make, because someone has to create stuff. So there has to be someone who has to do manufacturing. They have to do logistics, warehouses and all that. So there's going to be separate low income 1 mile cities that aren't going to have all the amenities of the high scale ones, which again is a ghetto and a low class ghetto. This stuff doesn't work, but yet no one's talking about it. And if you see every article since 2020 has either praised it and said it's the best thing that has ever existed and it's a utopia, or it is an article saying you are a troglodyte, you're not smart enough to understand why this is so great, you're evil, how dare you question it. Those are the only two types of articles that exist on this subject.
Well, here's the thing. Okay,
And by
these
the way,
already exist.
By the way, no, it doesn't exist anywhere except one city in Poland. That's it.
I hate to disagree with you on this, Michael, but I'm going.
Okay.
And here's the reason why. You can go to San Jose, right? And my dad lives in San Jose. And where he lives, within walking distance. Okay.
But do you know the way to San Jose?
What's that?
But do you know the way, San Jose?
But
I'm sorry,
within
I
a
had
mile
to.
from his house, you can walk to a grocery store, you can walk to a restaurant, multiple restaurants. There's multiple churches within that. There's movie theaters, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
These already exist. Okay. And if you're on a bike, easily within 15 minutes of his house on bike, you can go to all these things. Okay, it already exists. Almost every urban area has this already.
To an extent, except they're not isolated. They're not programmed.
They're not walled off
planned
from each other, no. But
yeah,
they're not. They have planned. Them.
But that's just normal development of small towns. That's development of communities inside cities. I mean, like in New York City, you go 6 blocks in any direction, you've got a new community. Is that a 15-minute city? Yes, but no, because remember, their components are, and they detail this, their components are, it must be green, it must comply with the climate change methodology, it must comply with the amenities that they want to put in there. You are required to be part of that community. So it's a big part of socialism is incorporated.
In other words, they want to make an internment camp. And they want everybody living in their little sector, and you aren't allowed to leave your sector without permission.
Yeah, essentially. It's a ghetto. It's a 1930s ghetto. Yeah. And they think it's a great idea, and they want this across all of Europe and in the United States. and no one's talking about it. And since I put out the article, YouTube has been beating me up in the algorithms because I dared to actually say this isn't a good idea. Oh, by the way, George Soros is also one of the backers, not just
Oh,
the
yeah.
World Economic Forum, but George Soros is deeply involved in this. And and if people go to the site, they'll see the links that I have to the articles and to the organizations to show you that no, I'm not just saying it's George Soros. It's literally George Soros owned organizations are deeply involved in creating this. I have all the links. I did the research.
Yeah. Essentially, what this 15-minute city is a cordoned off area where you are not allowed to leave without permission. Okay, and they're not going to present it that way because nobody will accept it that way.
Right.
But that's exactly what it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, because like I said, pretty much everywhere has this. Okay, unless you're in the rural areas, they all have this within 15 minutes of pretty much anybody's house, no matter where they live. You can find grocery stores, you can find restaurants, you can find drugstores, you can find, I mean, you name it, you can find it. You can find parks, etc. Okay, all this stuff that they supposedly are, all these amenities that they're supposedly bringing in, they already have. And a lot of places already have bike lanes.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is just a precursor of saying, okay, now we're going to make you live and work within that 15-minute city, and you won't be allowed to leave. No.
Yeah, that's what they want. Yeah. And that is their argument. That is what they are proposing. And they keep saying, Mom, but it's free and you'll enjoy it. And the answer is always, but it's good for you. Don't question it. Don't disagree. Obey. That's their thing. Obey. We're telling you this is good for you. You're too stupid to understand. Literally, the guy who put this together, Carlos Moreno, is literally quoted by Politico as saying, if you disagree, you are a troglodyte. You don't understand. You're too stupid to get what he's doing for you. They literally are telling you.
United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change is heavily supporting this.
Yes, it's a UN initiative. It's a WEF initiative with several Soros backers. Yeah, I've got links to all of them. Oh yeah.
What I think they
go ahead.
should do is take the people from the WEF and the WHO and the UN and the WGAF, you figure out what that means, and build a little city and put all of them in it. Let them all live their little utopia and check back with us in a year and let us know how it's going. And we'll tell them when they can leave or if they can leave. We'll supervise what goes into their city and what comes out of their city. Because that's the other thing. Yeah, they're going to build this little city.
Yep.
Has anybody given a single thought to sanitation?
That's part of the redesign and why it costs so much. They have to redesign everything.
But what are they going to redesign? You need sewer treatment, water treatment. You need landfill room. You need recycling. You need to have disposal areas. You need to have all of this stuff. Where do they intend on putting all of this in their little 1 mile city? What they plan on doing is shipping that out so that it looks nice.
Yes.
And it looks pretty. It's the byproduct. Oh, we don't talk about the byproduct. Well, if they're that is the emissions of their cities. They won't talk to you about. It's like when the electric car ad is on TV and they tell you, oh, it's an emissions-free vehicle, because they don't tell you where the real emissions are. The real emissions are in the coal plant
Factory.
where the electricity is being generated. So they're not going to tell you where the emissions from these cities are. They're not going to tell you where the waste goes, where the sewage goes. Oh, that's probably my computer doing that bing bing. Yeah. They're not going to tell you where all of that comes from. You know, they're not going to tell you that, because it doesn't figure into their equation. But it's there. It's there. They're just not going to tell you about it because it paints a very ugly picture.
Yeah, the British Royal Town Planning Institute is really pushing this.
Yeah. And Denmark and Germany are pushing it. Germany, Denmark, the United Kingdom, Cleveland, and it's starting to take hold amongst progressives in the United States. This is the next wave. Within 5 years across America, in the progressive cities, you're going to be hearing about this a lot. I'm well ahead of most of the American public in noticing this, because I have people from the UK bring it to me. But this is the next wave of climate change. This is the next thing.
Okay, so let's see, where did I find that?
I would say let's experiment with Staten Island.
Neighborhoods
Family lives
outside New Jersey.
So instead, we experiment in the city.
Seattle's planning on becoming the next 15-minute city.
Progressive. Jersey,
how Houston can become a 15-minute city.
Progressive. Austin.
Rutgers University, 15-minute neighborhoods, lessons from outside New Jersey.
I went to Rutgers, my college. Hyper progressive.
Urban Design Lab, 15-minute city, a vision for the future.
Mm-hmm. You're not going to, and in every single one of those articles, you're not going to hear a negative word. It's all perfect and wonderful. And if you think that they are wrong, you are evil.
Metropolitan Planning Council, 15-minute city. How close is Chicago?
Mm-hmm. Progressive. Notice the trend. Notice the consistency. And it's funny because it takes like 5 seconds for, once you explain it to anyone, any normal person, not a progressive, everyone says the same thing. Well, that's restrictive. It's oppressive. It's a ghetto. This is a slum. This is not a good idea. Everyone across the world says the same thing when you explain what it is. But yet they're telling us, no, you just don't understand. It's like, just now we have come up with more of the issues that need to be addressed in this thing if it's supposed to be an idea, and they won't address any of them in any article I have seen yet. It's insane. But because I bring it up, I'm the bad guy, and YouTube is suppressing my channel now because I actually dared to show the links to all of what they did.
Oh, this is also an anti-property, anti-ownership movement.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're all saying how nobody should really own anything.
You'll own nothing, be happy.
Yeah, you're going to be living in an apartment. You're not going to be having a house.
Right.
You can't have a house in these cities.
Yeah, so you don't own the floor because the floor is somebody else's ceiling. You don't own the walls because the walls are somebody else's walls. You don't own your ceiling because it's somebody else's floor.
Mm-hmm.
You don't own anything. You don't own a car. So all your roads you have to share. They're probably going to wind up being one of them city bike cities,
mm-hmm.
Where they have the little electric city bikes. No, you can't bring your own bicycle. Use one of the city bikes, one of them little, hey, what do they call them bikes that we see in the city?
They got a term. I've seen them in France. Paris has them a lot.
What are they called? What do they
City bikes.
call those bikes that we see in Charlotte? Don't they have like a special name for them? The little green and white bikes. Yeah. I don't know. Well, every city's got a different company that's that's running that scam. And I love how you see them laying on the side of the highway
Yeah.
where they don't belong. They're not supposed to go down onto the highway, but you see them getting thrown off the overpasses and stuff like that. But it'll be no ownership. Wait until they tell everybody you can't own a dog. Because they're gonna tell you about what animals are going to be permitted to be in the city,
If any.
Well, dogs are going to take up a certain amount of resources. Cats are going to take up a certain amount of resources. There's only so many truckloads of shit we can send into your city per week. So, dog food and cat food and pet supplies, well, that's not going to be on the list of prioritized items. So sorry, no pets. And since this is a no ownership city, well, you can't own pets anyway.
There are so many problems with this. But yet, as Mike is going over, and as I mentioned, the progressive cities are saying, we're going to, mind you, they're not going to the public and asking the public if they want to do this. They're saying they're going to do it to the public. This is a decision being made outside the realm of American citizens being able to choose. The information isn't being provided to the public. The planners are saying, we're doing this, and the people are just going to have to deal with it, which is yet another problem with this. I understand the EU, Europe, they're not as free as us, so they're used to being told what they're going to live with. But in America, we're supposed to be involved in this process, and we're not. Which is why people should, and I know a lot of people are like, oh, Mike, I've never heard of this. I don't get it. Yeah, but the second you start walking down this rabbit hole, you start seeing how bad this gets really quick on every level. So I had to talk about it.
Oh, here in Charlotte, that program is called the Lime Bike, Lime, Lime Bike.
Okay. I've heard it called city bikes.
Well, that's the city bikes are the blue and white bikes. They're half pedal, half electric.
Right.
The ones here in Charlotte are actually like little scooters. Like you kick your foot on the ground and scoot along.
Oh, yeah.
But they're electric, and you're supposed to tap your card to get it to rent. That's how the motor works, and you just ride it around the city for all you want. And when it dies, you get off of it, you find another one, get on that one, and you go. And what they do, and with the people that they leave them wherever they are. Then at night, they send a big truck out, and the big truck gathers all the ones that they used the day before, and brings them back to a warehouse so they can charge them overnight. And then another truck comes out and deposits new ones out in the street for the next day. So, so whatever they're saving in emissions, they're burning up by having big giant trucks pick these things up, bring them back, and charge them overnight. Because this is it's ecologically friendly.
Supposedly, as long as you don't look at all of the details, as long as you only look at one little snapshot of a very, very small image and don't look at anything else connected to it. My electric vehicle is clean. Don't look at the power plant that actually makes the electricity. Yeah, of course. It's the same logic. And people are being convinced of these things. It's so insane.
Now, what's going to happen to all of those people in these 15-minute cities that enjoy parks, enjoy recreation, might want to go to a baseball game or a football game? Or what happens to all of those people? What's going to happen to all those people who like to play golf?
You don't get golf.
Oh my God!
You can have basketball because you can put it in a gym.
Yeah, but that's a lot of square footage that could house, a couple of hundred people. So they might have to forego that and just put, a hoop on a street corner Since there's no cause, you ain't gonna worry about the kids getting run over.
Yeah, there's that. But I mean,
And
these
what
are
happens? What happens in all of these cities when the inclement weather hits?
they theoretically, according to Carlos Moreno, who created this, he's a Frenchman. His idea is this will work regardless of the size, geography, or density of wherever they put them. So it will work exactly the same in the Bronx as it will in LA, Moreno Valley, in Cleveland, in Paris, in London. It's going to work the same everywhere. Doesn't matter what kind of geography you have, doesn't matter how dense the city may be. And the only actual viable proof they have put together, again, is Prezu. It's a Polish city, Prezu. That was already a 1 mile city anyway. That's their only proof of concept. But they're going to do it around the world. It's a stupid idea.
Well, here I'm gonna throw a link in the outside chat if one of you guys cares to share it on the screen. This is what's coming to my mind is what they're doing in Saudi Arabia. I don't know if you've heard about the linear city that they're currently constructing in Saudi Arabia, or I don't know if they've actually started building it or it's just been proposed. Saudi Arabia is trying to build a 100-mile long linear city.
That's different.
So it's a building. It's a building. One building, multiple floors, 100 miles long. That they want it to replace. This is the city of the future concept. This is George Jefferson stuff in Saudi Arabia. That it's going to go from the desert to the sea. 100-mile long straight city.
And that's a stupid idea. But Saudi Arabia doesn't care if it works because they have the money. They don't care.
Yeah, well, this is going to be relatively impressive because the roof is going to be doubling as all of your airports.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Because planes don't
landing
crash.
The airplanes on the roof of a 100-mile long building built in the middle of the desert. So
yeah, because planes don't crash ever.
Right, and it's all supposed to be solar powered and green and all the rest of this stuff, and this is where they want to put everybody in Saudi Arabia.
No, that's a stupid idea. I can think of a dozen. I can think off the top of my head of a dozen different ways that's a stupid idea. But it's all part of the climate change mentality. And let's remind everyone out there, climatologists who have existed since the 1950s have never been correct in the history of their entire science. Every prediction they have ever made, this is a fact. It's not an opinion. It's not a question. Every single climate model, every single prediction their science has made has been proven to be wrong. They have never once been correct about anything they have ever said since 1958. And we are changing the world based on information that has never been correct.
Here's another one that comes to mind that was recently talked about. Not that long ago. It's been a few years. And it's still being talked about some. Okay, so basically what a vertical city is not skyscrapers. Essentially everything you need, your work, your hospital, healthcare, your grocery store, everything that you need is in this one building. Certain floors are going to be set up for retail. Certain floors are going to be set up for healthcare. Certain floors are going to be set up for living. Okay. And basically, everything in this building, there'll be enough in it to support the population of that building. So you would have no need to leave that building at any time.
You know where they got that idea from?
China.
Judge Dredd. No,
Mhm.
they got the idea from Judge Dredd. It's a comic book. Have you ever
I
seen it?
am the law.
Exactly. Not the Sylvester Stallone 1980s version, but the Carl Urban 2000 version, where they're actually showing you the mega city and the mega apartment complexes with 100,000 people in one. That's where they got the idea from. By the way, this comic book is 55 years old. It was a dystopian sci-fi fantasy. Basically, if you took Conan the Barbarian, put him into the far future, it's the same kind of concept. It's a stupid idea. It works great as a movie. It's good as a comic book. It doesn't work. None of these stupid ideas work. But they want you to believe that this is the next wave, that this is, and you have to do it. Otherwise, you hate the planet and you're an evil person.
Well, exactly.
That's how you know the reason why when they were written 50 and 60 years ago with Judge Dredd, it wasn't written as a prognostication of what would happen in the future. It was meant to be entertainment. Everyone kind of knew that it doesn't work because Superman doesn't work. Batman and Robin doesn't really work. The Flash doesn't work. X-Men don't work. Captain America don't work. All of that other, why would, or every other piece of entertainment that's all it was designed for, entertainment. But when fiction becomes proposed reality, you have to say to yourself, well, gee, why didn't you look at the stuff that they had to say, well, why when I go to a car show and they show me that the car is going to fly in 10 years and I'm still waiting for the last flying car from 40 years ago to show up? Why don't you work on the shit that you said was going to be plausible instead of changing the game? Because they know that every time they propose something that is never going to work, it only has a certain shelf life before they have to propose the next thing. And then that'll get proven that it doesn't work.
It's ridiculous when you start thinking, and how much of our society right now, and how much of our government right now is dedicated to these ideas. And it's when you start thinking about the climate, you start walking down the climate change rhetoric that's out there. Think about all the money we are spending again on a section of science, a sector of science that has never been correct.
Well, listen, this goes back. It was a point I was going to make about when we were speaking last week about California and the reparations plan. They have their reparations board that's supposed to be doing this. What they come up with a ridiculous idea. They propose a ridiculous idea. Well, how is the only way that we're going to know whether or not their idea is truly ridiculous or not? Dedicate hundreds of millions of dollars to studies orchestrated by the people that came up with the idea. Pay them to do the research on whether or not their idea is going to work and let it take 10 years and spend hundreds of millions of dollars on it. Every one of these bullshit schemes is a money-making opportunity. When we were talking about reparations, do you know that the Reparations Council has a $2 million a year budget?
Why am I not surprised?
They have a $2 million a year budget for something they're not going to do. It's never going to happen. California wasn't even a state by the time slavery had come to an end. So why is California going to talk about being responsible for any sort of reparations when they never were the recipient of the benefits, quote unquote, that they say that slavery provided. So they're talking about reparations. They know it's never going to pass, but it's a great opportunity for the 5 people on the council to make a couple of $100,000 each this year.
No, I don't even think it's because of the corruption is real, but I think it's more so. This is how they get the votes. They're going to get a bunch of donations, and they're going to get votes from the black community and all disadvantaged communities, and I'm using quotes for that, because they're like, free money. Yes,
right.
But you have to keep me elected, otherwise you don't get the free money.
Right, but in the short term, the free money is going to the studies that don't equate to anything, because they know it's not going to pass. They know it's not going to go anywhere, and they go, well, shit. If we're going to do this, if we're going to do this to get reelected, we might as well make a little coin at it too while we're at it. Let's put these boards together, do studies, and we'll get a bunch of shit and money. No, everybody else will get a promise that ain't worth nothing except the vote that we know we're going to get. Look, all of these things. Look, this goes back Agenda 21. During the Obama years, everybody was talking about Agenda 21. It's the same thing, except these 15-minute cities are Agenda 21 to a smaller scale with a different twist on.
Well, they updated it to Agenda 2030, and then it became Agenda 2050. They didn't change anything except the date by which it's supposed to be completed. And once again, they always just kick it down the road. Why? It didn't work. Kick it down the road. Just keep saying it and kick it down the road, because it's not real.
Yeah, but they're all to save us from the rising sea levels.
That ain't happening.
Guys post that picture that's in the chat?
Oh yeah, I had it. I just had it up there.
I got it.
Because
you got it.
Al Gore's been telling us since 1992 that the sea levels will going to swallow up Europe, half of Asia, all of Africa, and swaths of the United States. That it will all happen. That on the screen is Plymouth Rock. The number was engraved when the Mayflower landed at Plymouth Rock, 1620. Plymouth Rock has not moved. It's still at sea level. It's at the same level it was 422 years ago. That's the reigning champion of calling climatology bullshit, because the sea levels have not risen.
423 years ago, or 403 years ago.
403 years, yeah. Well, 403 years, that's the reigning champion right there. When you show me Plymouth Rock without some sort of massive geological fault line cracking and sending part of that tectonic plate to the bottom of the ocean, until that rock is 30 feet below water, you're not going to convince me that the sea levels are rising. Not from somebody who grew up in New York City. You know what New York City is surrounded by? Water.
Yeah.
New York City is surrounded by water. My house was at sea level. If it rose 3 inches, my house would have been underwater.
Well, you got to understand, Obama bought beachfront property in Martha's Vineyard because he's confident that we're going to stop global warming before the oceans rise and wipe out his beachfront property.
Oh, no, Mike, you're wrong. You're wrong. You see, Al Gore bought beachfront property in Florida, okay, because he wanted to be able to independently monitor the rise of the sea levels. Obama bought his beachfront property at Martha's Vineyard because he truly believes that when the sea level does rise, he'll be able to go outside and part the water before he walks on it.
Yeah.
Because Obama's got the God complex.
Yes,
Obama thinks he's God. Al Gore thinks he's a scientist. Bill Nye the Science Guy thinks he's the authority on everything when he's an actor.
Yeah.
And Alec Baldwin is a firearms instructor. The whole world is
out of their minds. They're out of their minds. But yet,
the world's leading climatologists with over 300 published papers cannot get in front of the UN to talk about how how it's bullshit, but they put a 15-year-old potato face girl with some sort of ADD thing going on who hasn't been to school since she's 9 years old. She is the world authority. How dare you?
Yeah.
You've stolen my childhood. How dare you?
The only one who stole her childhood were her parents when they put her on a boat to try and go across the Atlantic screaming about climate change, something she doesn't know a damn thing about. Those parents should have
Well,
been punished for child abuse to what they did to her.
please,
So-
we can't get the people from Epstein Island punished for what they did to the children there.
True enough.
Does anybody know what Bill Nye's actual?
Engineering.
Yep.
He's an
He's a
engineer,
mechanical engineer.
which has nothing to do with climate or environment.
No, it doesn't.
Or any or 2,000 of the other things that he talks about as if he knows what he's talking about. It's but and people go, but they're on TV, they're an authority. I've been doing this crap for 17 years. Theoretically, remember they used to say that if you do something for 10 to 12 years as a specialization, that you focus on that you have the equivalent of a master's, if not a doctorate degree, just from the life experience. Yeah. Well, I've been doing this for 17 years and they still tell me, but Mike, you don't know. I've done the research. What do you mean I don't know? Because it's the authority complex. It is it's actually a fallacy of authority, where because a quote unquote authoritative source has said it, it must be true. Yeah, okay. That's why the New York Times was wrong about the laptop. They don't want to go into that. They don't want to tell you about how much they lie to you on a regular basis. And they use the authority as their shield, saying, no, but we know better. We're smarter than you are. No, you're not. It amazes me. And I mean, that's just one example of it. But then there's the whole January 6th thing. And while
Yep.
that's happening at the same time, so we have, January 6th, it's an insurrection. How dare you show us actual video evidence that refutes the argument that's been made, but at the same time, we can't talk about or see the video evidence of what Antifa is doing in Atlanta, 150 of them firebombing public facilities. Forget about attacking the police. This is destruction. The city of Atlanta, duly elected officials in the city of Atlanta came up with this plan so that police officers, fire departments, and emergency medical services could be trained to better protect and serve the people of Atlanta. And a bunch of people, not even from the state of Georgia, some of them from France and Canada and Germany, decided that they don't like what the city of Atlanta has done. And so they're firebombing public property that has to be paid for by the poor people in Atlanta. And they don't want the fire department, the emergency medical services, or the police department to be trained to better serve the people of Atlanta. Does that make sense to anyone? And we can't talk about that because Antifa doesn't exist. And of course, the progressive left are all good guys doing only good things. Oh my God, they piss me off.
Well, that's how you know that whole bullshit January 6th thing was just that bullshit. It was a kangaroo court, because the definition of the kangaroo court, as you know, is a court that doesn't go by the rules of jurisprudence.
Right.
If that was a real court, a real hearing, all of that video would have been entered into evidence listed under exculpatory.
Yes.
Exculpatory evidence. It's evidence that disproves the allegation. That's how people become exonerated. when their lawyer presents exculpatory evidence. An eyewitness says they saw somebody who looks exactly like you commit this crime in Minneapolis, Minnesota on such and such a date. Okay, well, here's my evidence. Here's photographs, videotape, eyewitness statements, fingerprints, and DNA analysis that says I was in Chicago at that time. And I was being interviewed live on television from ABC Studios. No, that's inadmissible. We're going to go with the unreliable eyewitness account rather than even look at your exculpatory evidence. And how they twisted every piece of that video that they possibly could. That little snippet of Josh Hawley running through the thing, making it look like he was the lone runner. All of a sudden, he was the Bruce Jenner of Congress. Running walls, sprinting for his life. He was actually the last person in a line of dozens of people being instructed to leave by the Capitol Hill police. Being told to leave.
It's crazy when we start thinking about what. Remember, they got 40,000 hours of video.
Right, and most of it is staring at an empty room or an empty hallway.
Here's my thing: it's 40,000 hours of video, and the argument right now is, how dare Tucker Carlson show the American people any of that evidence?
All right.
That's the problem they have, is he's showing people information. How dare he do that? Wait a minute. If you're so sure that you're right, wouldn't you want the evidence out there? Wouldn't you want the American people to see this?
Well, here's what good old crying Chuck don't understand. The U.S. Capitol belongs to we the people. The cameras in the U.S. Capitol are property of we the people. The Capitol Hill Police Force are paid for by tax dollars collected from we the people. We the people own the evidence. We have every right to see the evidence. And for him to come out and make threats against Fox News, Tucker Carlson, or anybody else by saying, you have a duty and a responsibility not to air this inflammatory, altered, this, that, and everything else. No, they have a responsibility to air it.
Yes.
They're not an obligation not to air it, a responsibility. The truth, no matter how much it hurts, must be told. And it must be shown. People need to know the truth.
And if they dispute it, if they think, oh, he's altered it somehow, fantastic. Show us if you're saying it's edited or it's somehow out of context, show us the video. You've got it. Notice they won't offer anything that refutes what he has shown us. And all he showed us is, the evidence does not match the highly selected, highly edited video we were shown before. Reminds me of when Ashley Babbitt got shot. I think I showed you guys the video when I was covering it last month when her mom got arrested. On the historical one, that if you go and look at the shooting of Ashley Babbitt, the initial video that was shown to the American people is edited. Because if you go, and there is video that exists, it's out already, 2 minutes before Ashley Babbitt gets shot, almost to the second. If you look at that video that they cut down in every major news media, what you will see is Capitol Police standing in front of the door that she got shot through, 3 officers standing in front of her with the 4 officers who are in full body armor, who have M4s that are standing on the stairway that goes down and around that corner. They're on that stairway, 4 officers there, and 3 regular Capitol Police officers in front of the door. About a minute before Ashley Babbitt gets shot, they walk away from the doors, they walk down the stairway and around the corner, all of the police officers. The ones with the M4s and body armor, the regular Capitol Police officers that were guarding the door. Then some idiot decides to bang on the window a little bit. And right after that, out pops the gun, points at Ashley Babbitt, and shoots her. Then those officers who were right around the corner on the stairs walk back up and into the room. The video that everyone has seen is from her getting shot forward, but they don't show you the 2 minutes beforehand where the Capitol Police had complete control of that room and gave it up for no one knows what the reason. They started talking to each other. It looks like they may have got a message. Don't know for sure, but they were talking amongst themselves. And then they all decide to uniformly and at the same moment leave the room. That's when she gets shot.
Well,
Gee.
what I want to know is the radio traffic from Capitol Hill Police Department microphones and walkie-talkies, their two-way communications, is that recorded the way the dispatches are recorded? Because in major metropolitan
By
cities,
law, it is
all-
supposed to be, but it can be classified.
Well, it's not even that it can be classified. It is not subject to FOIA by the public. It is, they are required to record it, but you and I can't get it. Only Congress can.
You have to actually have a subpoena in order to get it.
Well, then I think perhaps would if there are any members of Congress who actually seek the truth, maybe they should be subpoenaing the radio traffic to find out what's going on. Because I'm sure a lot of those people that were outside whispering in the ears of the Capitol Hill police that whose identities are known, but the Democrats said, oh, they're innocent bystanders. Their voices should be heard on those as well.
And actually, they're like TAC channels that they commonly use. Those typically aren't recorded. There can be multiple channels that they could use for various traffic that do not get recorded and are not required by law to be recorded. The only thing that's required by law to be recorded is actual dispatch traffic.
Let's see if we can't dig a little deeper on this week. Take a little look, because I know that there's every piece of paper in Capitol Hill is supposed to be recorded, is supposed to be documented. You know, every single thing that's written, said, everything is supposed to, because it's in the people's building. That's the people's house. Everything that happens there has to do with we the people. It's supposed to be safeguarded and kept for a record. So they might be one of the departments that's required to have all that stuff. You know, I mean, that's why there's so much shit they never released from Kennedy. You know, but I don't know. Listen, guys, I'm going to book out of here a little early tonight. I'm going to leave you guys to yourselves. I'm going to be watching from my phone. I have been up since 4 o'clock this morning. I've driven 450 miles today. I am exhausted to no end, and I have got to go get myself some sleep. So
Yeah, that's a lot.
So I'm gonna go. I'm gonna set my sleep timer up for what do we have here? We're 1 hour and 3 minutes into the show. I'm gonna set my sleep timer up for 50 minutes, and I will let you guys serenade me with your majestic radio-like voices. So for everybody in the crowd tonight, say you guys be safe, shoot straight. Jan Rains, love you, babe. Winky, talk to you later. Winky, Blinky, whatever. We're missing a couple other people. Jeremy, where are you, bud? Come on, let's go. Get the lead out, buddy. All right, guys, have a good night.
Have a good night, Frank.
Talk to you guys tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy, and Jan brought up that, now they're trying to say, oh, but did you see what Tucker said about Trump? Which, here's the thing. I don't care what any of them said. They can say anything they want privately. It doesn't, and even if they said it publicly, It has nothing to do with the evidence that was shown. It's a matter of them trying to discredit them. Same thing that was happening this week in Congress about Matt Taibbi as he was making his, he was going over the Twitter files with, it was the congressional hearing that he was in. And they're trying to discredit him. Oh, you made money because people were paying attention to the story you were talking about. People were
You're back.
Yep, he's back. Because people were paying attention to the story about the Twitter files, seeing the corruption, seeing our FBI involved with our private industry to suppress people's freedom of speech. Oh, gee, what a surprise that people want to find out the actual information that is available. And the answer from the Democrats were, oh, well, you made money on it, so you did this for money. They're trying to discredit him. They're trying to discredit Tucker. Oh, my God. See, you didn't like Trump. Who cares? That doesn't change the evidence that has been provided. The Twitter files exist. No one's disputing their veracity. The video of the QAnon shaman exists. No one can deny the veracity. The fact is, the evidence is real. You can say you don't like the person showing it, but it's real, it's true, and it does not change the consequential reimagining or re-understanding of the situation. The things that we were told were not completely true at the least, and at the best, we were lied to. Twitter is breaking the First Amendment, is working with the United States government. The U.S. government is involved in expressing people's voice, or was. And yes, 9/11. They weren't all maniacs trying to take over the government. They weren't some organized group of people trying to shut down the government or take over the government or overthrow the government. It's not real. But that's not politically advantageous. So they have to discredit people. But you can't discredit the evidence, which is why they keep saying, don't look at the evidence. They don't want anyone to look at the evidence. Don't look at the Twitter files. Don't look at the video from January 6th. Don't compare what happened in January 6th to what's happening in Atlanta right this second. Don't do that, because you might come up with an answer that doesn't match the political agenda certain people have. That's very upsetting.
Mm-hmm. Well, and we're starting to see that more and more in pretty much all of our politics, where how dare you question me? How dare you question what I'm saying? Because you are nothing. I'm an elected representative. You are nothing. So how dare you question me?
Yeah, it's part of that whole mentality of what I call neo-feudalism. They are the neo-modern nobles. We are the serfs. We are peasants. And they get to decide everything, and they get to make all the choices, and we get to suffer. And it's the absolute inversion of what America was built on. The public makes the choices. No. Chuck Schumer is smarter than all of us. Chuck Schumer hasn't had a real job in 50 years. He doesn't know what it is. Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, they all live behind walls in private luxury homes, living the life of Riley. They're the top 5%, if not the top 1% of America. Half of them are all millionaires doing a public job, only making $175,000 a year. How do you get to become a millionaire working in government and you only make $175,000 a year? How do you become a millionaire? Oh, no, but we can't ask that question. We can't question them. Chuck Schumer is smarter than everyone, even though Chuck Schumer doesn't actually work a real job, hasn't worked a real job in 5 decades, doesn't even go out into the public unless it's for a photo op to help push him into the next reelection. Mm-hmm. He doesn't go out and actually talk to real people. He doesn't actually walk around and see what his constituents are living like. He doesn't care. It's very
And
upsetting.
truth is, most of our representatives don't talk to the people.
Yeah.
They talk to lobbyists. They talk to special interests. They don't talk to the people. Okay, most of the letters that are written to various representatives, senators, etc., are never read by them. They're
No.
read by some aide. If they get read, a lot of them just get filed. Okay, we have no representation anymore, and I've been saying that for years that we are no longer represented. We don't have a representative government anymore. They try to claim that we do because, yeah, we're allowed to vote every 2 years. Okay, but we don't. And I don't care what your candidate is, I don't care what your political party is. If you think you're actually given a choice at the ballot box, think again. You were given a candidate by a party, and you choose a party. You don't choose who's elected. You choose a party.
More and more that is the case, and it doesn't have to be because we can be involved. I've told
Oh,
many.
we can, but that's the thing is we can. We can change this.
Oh
And
yeah,
we've had this discussion many, many times too. Okay, but too many people refuse to get involved. Too many people refuse to educate themselves on this stuff. Okay, and look what it's doing to our country.
destroying us.
It is. It is literally destroying us. It is leading us down a path to another civil war or another revolution.
I say civil war.
And I honestly don't think we will survive that.
No, we won't. We're going. I believe, and I would say for myself, we're going to a civil war. In 2016 was the first time that I was addressing and talking about the growing sentiment that there was going to be a second civil war in America. That's
And
when
actually,
I
I
first
think
started
we're
talking
already
about it.
in it.
I think we're in the verbal portion of it, not the physical, but we're in the
I think
verbal.
we're already in the physical.
Not
Charlottetown.
yet.
Look
Not
what's
yet.
happening in Seattle. Look what's
I
happening.
know Atlanta.
Riots.
Atlanta right now, the autonomous zones throughout the nation. I agree with you. But here's why I say it's not physical yet. Those are the initial, call it scouting or skirmishes. Those are the things that happen before the actual battle starts. This is testing the ground, seeing where's weak, where's strong, what can we get away with. The reason why we saw in Atlanta, it was in February, we were talking about Atlanta, and it was just a handful of these radicals, these domestic terrorists, attacking the city of Atlanta, trying to burn it down. Now we have 150 of these radicals from outside, not just outside the city, outside the state of Georgia, outside of the United States that are coming in to do this now. That's a proof of concept that they could rally the troops, that they can, even in these regions, that they can come in and take over territory. That's a skirmish. That's a testing of the grounds so that when the actual battle comes in, they already know, oh, yeah, they can go into Atlanta. They know they can go to Portland. They know they can take San Francisco, New York, but they also know they can go to Austin. They can go to Boulder, Colorado. They have their little zones as bases to work off of. And that's when we see, when they start expanding from those areas, that's when we see the actual battle. That's what I see is coming, and we are getting closer and closer to it because we're having more of these autonomous zones. And by the way, every autonomous zone is an insurrection zone. They are insurrectionist by definition because they violate every local, state, and federal law. And they're developing these areas so that when the fighting actually starts, the door-to-door fighting, these are their headquarters across the nation, and they're very strategic. Think about it. You've got your West Coast, that's Portland, Seattle, LA, San Francisco, pretty much covers the entire West Coast. East Coast, you got New York, you got New Jersey, you've got Baltimore, you've got um, Atlanta. So you're pretty much covering the eastern seaboard. You've got in the middle of America, you've got Austin, you've got Boulder, Colorado, you've got Chicago. So again, notice you have these strategic areas, not just on the edges of America, but in the middle of America as well,
And
which
you've
are
also
dividing
got,
lines.
I think they got pretty serious Antifa activity in St. Louis and Kansas City.
Yep, they do. So, I mean, again, these are strategic areas that they've targeted, which splits the nation. This isn't the second Civil War is not going to be North versus South or East
No.
versus West. There are regions throughout this nation that have already been isolated and separated because all these autonomous zones that are ongoing right now have already been strategically put in almost a network that splits the nation so that
Well,
you
it's
can't
also,
just go
if you
east to
look
west
at it, it's the major ports of entry.
for the most part, yeah, and transportation. Ports of
Mhm.
entry and transportation in the center of the nation. Yep.
Yeah. Ports of entry and transportation hubs.
Yeah. And so that kills it makes it very difficult to send in supplies or people or anything from one area to another because you can't go through the transportation hubs. You're running into an Antifa autonomous insurrectionist zone.
Mhm.
So you can't go through there. It makes it very difficult to send in support and supplies to other areas that may be resisting this push. And I think it's very much a push of progressives versus everybody else. Not that I think the progressives win, but they don't need to. They just need to fight long enough to distract and weaken the nation. And then other outside elements jump on in. You could see a surge of drug cartels coming up through the Southwest. God knows what would come through our north, through Canada coming down. You've got both.
There's a
both
report in my
attack.
local paper
Yeah.
that illegal northern border crossings have increased 834%.
Yeah. Sounds about right. Because everyone's looking at the southern border and everyone forgets that the northern border, as wide open as the southern border is, the northern border is astronomically more open.
It
We
is.
have, we have entire states, the border with Canada for the length of a couple of states, North Dakota, Oregon, Washington State. They're wide open. There's nothing but a bunch of trees and maybe a marker every couple of miles that says, "Oh, U.S. border," and you could literally just walk right across, and there's nothing to stop anyone. And we know this. This is a fact. It's been a fact for decades. Everyone knows it.
Mhm.
Anyone who seriously wants to enter America illegally, go through, and they have the means to do so, just walk across from Canada. Just walk down to the northwest. You can walk right in. Can do it in, and that's what's terrifying about it. That's why we're in such trouble, I believe. And people can say, Mike, I got it wrong, or they disagree with me. I think I have lots of evidence that says, yeah, this is where we're going. And I think it's within 5 years, which happens to coincide with when China has been targeting, or at least what intelligence is saying, China is targeting Taiwan within the next 5 years. Japan is building its army within the next 5 years. South Korea is building up its armament and its capabilities within the next 5 years. You have the Middle East is building up. Well, they're always building up, but they're getting more active right now. You've got what's going on. Now we know that Moldavia is possibly a target of the Soviet Union, pushing back against NATO. We know that Poland has been terrified of this for a long time. Estonia, Lithuania, Latvia all believe that they're the next targets, and they're immensely smaller. So we've got that wave that may be happening in Western Europe. That's going on right now, and that's not going to get resolved for 10 years. I don't care who wants to declare themselves winner on any given day. That's going to be going on for a decade at least. Notice is all the timing is all these things. It's not conspiracy theory. This is how you intelligence projection of possible outcomes. Can't say it's absolutely true, but the indicators all seem to be pointing to within 5 years, all of these things are coming to a point, a precipice.
Well, last big invasion that Russia did, which was Afghanistan in 79,
Yep.
they stayed there until 89.
Yeah. And they had influence after that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And we were in, we were in Afghanistan 2 decades. We're still in Iraq. We're in Syria. These are all multi-decade conflicts that are going on. Vietnam was multi-decades. Well,
Yep.
it was about a decade, depending on how you want to count it. Korea was
multi-decades because Vietnam actually started in 59.
Right.
It didn't end until 75.
Right. And we were in and out of our support. The French were the first ones in, and roughly mid 60s, we started taking over and the French were getting out, and then we started fighting it. But so when we look at realistically, everyone likes to look at it like World War II. Well, it starts and it ends. World War II started in 1938. And there were precursors to that well before then. But World War II actually started in 1938. Europe was already at war. Prior to that, going back to 1934, 1935, there were already the elements of the war happening. Right. Kind of like we're seeing now. Elements are happening where there's these minor skirmishes going on and on and on, leading up to the moment that we can now look back on and say, oh, and that was the moment the war started. Well, that was 1938 for Europe.
Well, the same thing happened with World War I, too.
Yeah. Yeah, same thing. So when people are saying, oh, but you can't see that, it's like, yeah, we can see we're coming to that point. And I can see that if there's a civil war in America, that would be the perfect moment for the Chinese to go into Taiwan, for Japan to react to that, to South Korea reacting to that, North Korea going crazy. We could see the Middle East go absolutely ballistic at that time frame. And Russia is already in the middle of doing all the things they're about to do. They have a plan that they're already executing, so they don't care. But it would be the perfect distraction for the rest of the world. We're too busy fighting amongst our own to even bother to try and support anyone else, which is why the rest of the world is freaking out right now. Why every first and second world nation are all at this moment escalating. Every single one of them. There isn't a single first or second world nation at this moment that is not escalating its militarization.
Mm-hmm.
That tells me we're coming close to something. Something is about to happen.
Oh, it is.
I mean, does that all make sense to you, Mike?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. And as we all watch this, it's very telling that there is we are headed to a major conflict. And how that is going to lay out remains to be seen. Okay, as far as the sides are going, how they're going to break up. I mean, we know the major players. We know U.S. is going to be on the opposite side of Russia and China. We know UK is going to be on the same side as the U.S. Okay, so we know some of the major players, but some of the smaller players, we don't know which side that they're going to end up falling on. Okay, India is one of them.
Yeah.
Okay, we think that India will end up being on our side because their disagreements with China, but we don't know that for sure.
I wouldn't expect it. I don't think so. I don't think I think India doesn't give a damn, and they have their own objective. They're not going to be on our side. They have their own thing to go for.
Okay. And it may be one of those deals where there isn't just two sides.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It may be a battle royale where you have multiple sides all against each other.
Well, that's why I've always said, you've heard me say it, 3 regional wars, not World War III, 3 regional wars simultaneous. That's what I think is going to happen.
Well, there may be, you may end up with that, or you may end up with a global multi coalition, I should say, multi coalitions war. Okay, where it's like a battle royale.
I could see that too. Yeah. Would not surprise me. But however the form, and we won't really understand the form of it until after we're past it. That's the that's the way these things work out. We won't see everything until with clarity and pinpoint this day or that action did it until after it's all over. But we can I think we can say with a high degree of confidence that this is the path we are on right now. And I see nothing stopping it. And I think I think that many of our elected officials, the highest levels of our government and governments around the world, they all see it too, which is why they don't want the news media to talk about it at all. They avoid these subjects like the plague. They will not address them directly because
No.
then people would figure, because if you do, even slightly, even tangentially, then people start putting the pieces together and going, oh, they're building up for a problem. Something's about to happen.
Yeah. And like you said, okay, every country in the world is doing these build ups. The only one that actually is reducing its power is the United States.
Yeah, the one person that really shouldn't. The one person that the rest of the world needs to be strong is getting weak.
Yeah. Okay. And I mean, like I said, you see Japan's building up its forces, which it hasn't done since World War II. Okay. You got China building their forces. You got North Korea building their forces. You got South Korea building their forces. You got India building its forces. You've got Russia building its forces. Okay, you're seeing it in the European, in various European countries. They're all escalating their forces, their force buildups. You're seeing South American also building up forces.
True.
Okay, you got Brazil, Argentina are building up forces.
Yeah, that's the one that everyone
Colombia.
forgets. Yeah. No one looks at South America, but yeah, that's true. They're also right along with everyone else. I literally Australia. What was it last year? Middle of last year, we just made a new deal with Australia on submarines and building up their submarine forces for Australia. I can't point to a single nation except maybe Iceland. Literally. Now I'm thinking about it. Iceland is about the only country in the world that I can point to right now that isn't militarizing. Even the Philippines, they're trying to get American bases back into the Philippines because of the future militarization. The only person I can point to in the world is Iceland, is the only place that isn't trying to build up its military. And I probably am missing something there because I don't pay attention to Iceland. But they're the only ones that I'm not aware of militarizing right now.
Yeah, they are.
Oh, well, there you go. Like I said, they're the only ones I don't look at, but
They don't have their own actual military, but they are building up. The NATO is their primary protector, but they are doing some buildup of their own.
So Why am I not surprised? And if Iceland, of all places, is building up their military preparations, if they're escalating, something is going to happen. People don't just build up their militaries for nothing, especially like when we get the direct statement from Japan and from South Korea that their efforts to escalate are within a 5-year time frame. They're going to do it within 5 years. You don't do that. You don't spend that much time and money and that much effort to move that quickly without having some reason, some fear in your mind of, okay, we got to get this done within 5 years, not at the end of 5 years, but within 5 years, we have to be up and running. Why? That's too much money just to be, they're not just tossing money around. And you're right, Jan. It's in part because they don't trust the U.S., but they don't trust the U.S. to do what? They don't trust us to do something in that 5-year period. They really have to believe that something's going to happen near term, and they have to be ready for it. And they can't trust us.
And here's the bad thing. Okay. I talked about Argentina, Brazil, Chile, and a lot of Latin American countries or South American countries that are building up their military. Well, guess who's helping build up those militaries?
Well, probably China.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And Russia's helping build up militaries in Central America.
Yep. And it's big in Africa. Russia's big in South America and Central America. People need to, and no one is asking our politicians, any of the elected officials, no one's asking them, why is this happening? Everyone was like, oh yeah, well, Biden went over there and said it was okay. No, he said it was okay after Japan already said they're doing it. They didn't ask permission. They said they're doing it. And then 2 weeks later, Biden shows up and goes, this is a great idea. We're so happy. We're 100% with you. You didn't have a choice. They didn't have a choice. It wasn't like, ooh, they're going to change their mind. They said they're doing it. And Biden went over there to save political face and said, no, this isn't this idea. America is absolutely 100% behind it, because you couldn't do a damn thing about it if you didn't want to. They're doing it regardless of what America thought. And no one is actually questioning. And they really should. That's the problem with our major news media now. That's why we need, like what we're doing here, we need people to talk about this, because the major news media is more than happy saying, oh, well, yeah, but Biden went there and it was all okay. No, it's not okay. It is not even close to okay. There is a massive friggin' problem happening right now. And we need to talk about this. And we need to know, does anyone have a plan? Does anyone even understand the scope of the problem?
No, they don't. Okay. And, yeah. Pentagon budget aims to strengthen the military by thousands.
Yeah, it's. You know what's the scariest part about it, Mike? I figured that stuff out by myself. From 2016 through today, I've been following this internationally and been piecing it together. And in 2022, I was like, no, this is absolutely a thing. And I started talking about it much more regularly. Like I was doing weekly updates on, this is what's happening overseas. This is getting worse by the week. Started that like the middle of 2022, because it was like, it's all falling into place. I see it. I'm one guy. I spend 8, 12 hours on any given day doing research internationally as well as in the US. You're a smart man as well. You spend a good amount, more than the average American, also looking at these things. If we're able to figure this out and with reasonable understanding and logically lay this out, and it makes sense that it's probable, not that it's correct, but that it's probable, a high degree of probability here then I have to imagine people with far more information, with hundreds, screw that, tens of thousands of people working on all the little details in between that I can't see, you can't see, that we don't even know about. We don't have the intelligence agencies filling us with this information. I have to believe that people have a much more specific time frame and understanding of the nature of this problem, and they won't tell the public.
No, they won't.
That's terrifying.
And it is. And you see this week how the United States has stated that they may potentially send military troops in Mexico after the drug cartels, and Mexico's pushing back on that.
Yeah, that's why the drug cartels sent the letter, gave up all the guys who were involved and said, please, please don't attack us. We're so damn sorry. We didn't want to do that. Those were those crazy bastards. Go get them. And they're throwing them to the wolves because they know they don't want America to go ballistic on this. That is the last thing they want. They wouldn't have killed those kids if they had a choice.
Yeah.
Those guys, whoever did it, we knew they were dead the second that we found out there were bodies. They're like, because America would go crazy.
So yeah, there's a lot of things right now that we as Americans need to start insisting on transparency about.
Yeah.
Okay. The COVID is one of the big things. And I see the House sent a bill to Biden calling for all COVID documents to be unclassified. All coronavirus documents to be unclassified, which is a good first step. And I'm waiting to see how Biden ends up responding to it. Honestly.
He's not going to do it, but because he's afraid of the backlash, like Matt Hancock and the United Kingdom, they had that release, the 100,000 messages of their internal conversations, Boris Johnson and the rest, talking about COVID and saying, yeah, nothing that we're doing is actually effective, but we're doing it anyway. And they don't want, I'm sure if that's the conversation they were having in the United Kingdom, privately, back and forth amongst themselves, saying we don't need to close the schools. The kids are fine. No, close the schools anyway. Kids don't need masks. Give them masks anyway. Everyone's going to wear a mask anyway, but we don't need them. They're not actually effective. Doesn't matter. Do it anyway because of public optics. We got to do it anyway. And I have to believe if that's the conversation they're having, they're in contact with the U.S. They were having a conversation, which means the U.S. was having those same damn conversations.
Oh, yeah, guaranteed. And the thing is like I said, and I understand the need for certain things to be classified.
Yeah, of course.
I understand that. Okay, certain military capabilities, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
But our government goes way overboard in the amount of information that it withholds from the people, from the public. And considering that they are supposed to be our servants, they're supposed to be working for us, that is unacceptable.
It should be unacceptable. But all these things, and again, we can look at, and here's the thing is people aren't paying attention. They're so reliant on the authority bias of CNN and MSNBC that, oh, well, they didn't say that. The BBC said it. The Guardian has said it. Japan Times, Hindustan Times. There are more newspapers there's more news agencies than just MSNBC and the New York Times. The information is out in the world, and it doesn't take a large leap to go, gee, these world leaders are saying and doing these things. America knows our government has to be aware of that, even tangentially.
That's another reason why, okay, And our viewers, and actually all Americans, need to look at news sources outside of the United States.
Mhm.
Okay, they need to start looking at foreign news sources. Um, every country has English versions of their news media. Every country.
Yeah. I gave up on Fox and all the cable news networks a long time ago. And
Well,
I
they're
actually,
nothing more than propaganda machines anymore.
yeah, left or right. I don't like any of them. I almost never read.
Okay, they are
Definitely don't
nothing
listen to
more than a propaganda mouthpieces for the parties that they're supporting. That's all they are. Um, you don't hear, I mean, in the United States, there is no such thing as true journalism anymore.
not in the major media. Not in the major media.
Mhm.
There's people like Matt Taibbi and Glenn Greenwald who happen to be on the left, but I think they are good at what they do, and they're respectable and they're credible. They exist. There are people out there. People need to give up on this. Well, ABC didn't say it. ABC has an objective. They have an agenda.
It didn't come from the AP.
Yeah, AP. They're the no. Come on, they got an agenda too. You got to, and it's funny because when you line up these articles side by side, because I do that from time to time, it's amazing how many times I've put the missile launches in North Korea, and I'm looking at South Korean news. I'm looking at Japan's news. I'm looking at Israeli news, and then I look at U.S. news. Not only is the U.S. news about a day and a half after the fact, but they're like,
Yeah.
yeah, and they might. It's unconfirmed, but they might have possibly shot off a missile. We don't really know, and just in case, we're going to be taking a stronger stance. Meanwhile, Japan's like, not only do we know what the missile was, what was made with, exactly where it landed, how far it flew. They know everything down to the damn
Here's the
circuitry.
video.
Yeah, it's like Israelis will come up and go, look, we've got video of the thing flying through the air. It's like, and America's like a day and a half after that, like, well, they might have it's unconfirmed. The Israelis got pictures of it. Japan's like telling you everything except like the guy who built it. This is crazy. And people go, but it's not that bad. Do you know most people don't know? And the number, depending on who's counting, somewhere between 75 and 90 missiles, rockets, and ICBMs were many of them hypersonic, were fired by North Korea last year, which is
And
more than.
that's another thing. The United States does not have a hypersonic weapon.
No. And we can't shoot them down.
No, we have nothing that we can defend ourselves with from a hypersonic weapon.
Nothing at all. And
we do not have a hypersonic weapon.
Which means, which is terrifying considering that's where everyone in the world is moving towards.
Well, Russia's using them in Ukraine.
Yeah, they were just firing them today. I know. Where do you think they got them from? China.
Mm-hmm.
China's the leader on hypersonic. They got the technology from China, probably through either North Korea or possibly Iran, and it went over to Russia, and that's a problem because no one in NATO has a hypersonic. No one in NATO has a way to shoot them down.
No. And here's the other thing on this. Came out. I saw the article today that U.S. weapons that have been captured by Russian troops are making their way to Iran.
I've heard. I know that some of the American weapons disappeared. The ones that we gave to small arms that we initially gave to Ukraine. Mm-hmm. Many of them were showing up in Africa in the same crates. Like they didn't even open up the crate. They just took the whole crate and somebody refilled the crate to warlords in Africa. which is, again, this is terrifying stuff. And if we actually had an accountable, if people were asking our representatives on a regular basis, a bunch of people were asking them on a regular basis and say, I need an answer. What are we doing about this? We would actually have a better scenario than nobody knows. We're kind of just winging it. This is not, Biden Harris cannot wing anything. They're just not that competent.
Okay, let's see. According to sources, U.S., NATO, and other Western officials have seen several instances of Russia's forces seizing smaller shoulder-fired weapons equipment, including Javelin anti-tanks and Stinger anti-aircraft systems that Ukrainian forces have left behind on the battlefield.
That just instills such confidence in me. So much confidence. But I'm not surprised. I mean, the Ukrainians aren't trained to use our stuff. And they don't have an organized military. They're ragtag fighters. So I'm not surprised they're going to leave the stuff. It's not like they're not going to get more. They'll just turn around to Biden and go, give us another one. And he will.
Yeah. So, yeah, there's actually been quite a bit of news coming along that U.S. weapons that were sent to Ukraine are ending up in Iran. And that's not a good thing.
No, especially when the last 3 weeks we've seen that Iran has increased the amount of shipments of arms to Yemen and other rebel factions throughout the Middle East.
Well, here's the other thing. Okay, Iran has been very successful at taking other U.S. Weapon systems, reverse engineering them, and developing their own system based on what they reverse engineered.
Yeah.
The Iranian Tofan anti-tank missile was based upon the TOW missile. The Lockheed Martin Sentinel was reverse engineered in order for Iran to make their own drones, which are being used by Russia in Ukraine.
Yep. Notice how this goes full circle.
Mm-hmm.
And no one's asking a question about it. The major media, you can't even say that they don't know. They got, 10,000 people working at the New York Times? They've got at least 10,000 people at ABC, all the networks, at least 10,000 people apiece. They can't tell me that they don't know, that they're not as smart as you and me to figure out. They know. So why won't they tell anyone? Why won't they have any discussions about this? Where's the exposés about this?
There aren't any because, again, like I said, most of American news sources are propaganda pieces.
Yep.
Okay. And their whole thing, they don't really go into international unless it has some type of political twist to help further divide us. They don't go into the international scene.
But it's essential because we are far too involved with the rest of the world, whether you want to or not. We are far too involved with the rest of the world that you can just ignore what's happening everywhere else. We can't ignore. I mean,
but honestly,
North Korea. I mean, think about North Korea. We so blatantly ignored everything about North Korea, so much so that people don't even know that they were firing. They're still firing missiles this year. And that's directly impacting Japan and North Korea, which is South Korea, which is affecting us. That is our safety that is on the line with this whole thing. And the average person in America doesn't even know that this is happening. Because the major media doesn't think that's important enough. Either they think it's not important enough for people to know, or they want people to be stupid about it.
Okay. Headlines from NBC. Surprise. Trump's response to Manhattan grand jury news is a mess. One reason Donald Trump probably won't testify in New York, perjury. Prosecutors signal possible charges for Trump are likely. Andrew Weissman, there's no way on God's green earth that Trump testifies.
Who cares?
Okay.
Why do we care?
Exactly. One crucial difference could have saved us from today's abortion battle. Murdaugh may have testified his way into much more than a life sentence.
Who cares? He's
GOP's
convicted
phantom
already.
budget is Kevin McCarthy's largest blunder. GOP operatives violate KKK Act by harassing black voters, judge says.
Oh, God.
Okay. Okay.
It's incredible. It's incredible.
Bombshell text shows Tucker Carlson hates Trump.
Who cares?
Okay, I have yet. This is on NBC's front page.
Yeah.
I have yet. Oh, here's something. What does the Iran-Saudi Arabia truce mean for Washington standing on the global stage?
It's
There is
the last.
not there really.
What's that? You froze up. Uh-oh, folks. Mike's computer froze.
Okay, and then
Oh, there you're back.
I lost
okay,
your
you're back
audio.
now. Oh, you lost mine? Because I
There you
lost
go.
you. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. But yeah, I was looking at MSNBC's website, and there's like two things on there that even touch internationally, and they were so irrelevant.
Yeah. But I guarantee you, when you go to the BBC, when you go to Israeli Times, if you go to Japan Times, if you go to Hindustan News, you go around the world, and those are newspapers from around the world, in case
Right.
credible newspapers from around the world, these news agencies, they have this, they're talking about these things. They're
Go to
having
Al
these
Jazeera.
discussions. Yeah. Well,
Okay.
I hate Al Jazeera.
You get better information
do
from
have,
Al Jazeera
yeah.
than we do our own news sources.
Yeah, and that's really sad because they're at least talking about it. They blow it out of the water and they have their bias, but at least they're talking about it. And I've seen their articles, and other than their rhetoric being thrown in there, they're actually talking about the issues that everyone else is talking about, except here in the U.S. It's
Right.
amazing how much I have to look to foreign news to find out what's going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and honest, and we actually find out more about what's going on in our own country from foreign sources than we do from our own sources here in the United States again. Russia's web browser has a lot of info as well.
Yeah, I don't like Jan's mentioning the Russian browsers. The Russians are like Al Jazeera. They blow things out of proportion.
Mm-hmm.
And
they twist it towards a slant of making them look like heroes.
And mind you, I admit and understand every agency around the world has a slant and a bias.
Mhm.
Anyone who thinks that they doesn't understand news. Of course, they have a bias. But Al Jazeera, Russian Times, TASS, they all have like massive, blatant biases blown out of the water.
Right.
And it's as simple as take the same story. Again, this is one of the ways I can tell what's going on in some of these stories is you put up the story between one international credible organization versus another, and you read beyond the headline, just read the story and the information. Like I said, you want to find out about what's happening with North Korean missiles? Japan Times. Far more details, far better information than anything in America. You put that side by side, and it's like, oh my God, day and night difference between the two. But yeah, we were talking about Matt Taibbi earlier and the Twitter files.
Yeah, and it's honestly, it's getting sad because we are becoming such an uninformed country on as a whole.
Yeah.
Okay. And the thing is we shouldn't be. We should be one of the best informed countries in the world, honestly. If we had actual journalists doing actual news, we would be. Okay. At one time we were.
Yeah. The world used to look
and
to our
honestly,
news.
since when Biden took the anti-propaganda bill down,
Mm-hmm.
okay, not Biden, Obama.
Yeah.
That's when things really, really in our news media really started going to hell in a handbasket.
Well, that's back when Obama was telling us that certain news agencies aren't real news. They're not real news because he didn't like them,
Right.
which people should have lost their minds right then and there. It's like, no, you don't get to pick and choose what's real news. Just because you don't like them doesn't make them not real. You just don't like their focus. Doesn't mean they're not real.
And then, like I said, they took and made it so that news organizations could be propaganda machines, essentially. And they no longer have to report facts.
Responding to doubt. Yeah. I didn't know that. That Milken Plaskett's connected to the World Economic Forum. That is a scary group. The WEF.
It is.
I mean, they're the guys behind the 15 minutes cities that I was talking about when we started the show. But they're involved in so much. And I don't think any of it is good for the general public. I mean, everything has a wonderful face to it. They all of their ideas sound nice. And then you read into it, and it's like, no, this is nothing but problems and horrible. They have some of the most anti-freedom concepts baked into these wonderful, cheery titles.
Yeah, and it's all these concepts. If you actually look into them and actually understand, it's more than just reading the propaganda pieces about it. But if you actually understand what's going on with them, you will find out that it is literally set up to establish an elitist core that rule over everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. That's the whole thing about Oh, the ERG. Was that it? Yeah.
ESG.
ESG.
Mhm.
ESG.
Which is basically, for people who don't know, you may have heard of Agenda 21, Agenda 2030, Agenda 2050, sustainability. They're all the same thing. That's ESG. That's all the same thing.
It basically stands for environmental,
Sustainability.
social, and governance.
Yeah.
Okay. And you've got a lot of companies now that are becoming quote unquote ESG companies,
Yeah.
ESG corporations. ESG is a big thing that's been put forth by the World Economic Forum.
Yep.
Okay, that everybody needs to be environmentally friendly, socially acceptable, and governable. Okay. Um, and if you look at a lot of the agendas that are being put forth by the World Economic Forum, it is literally to set up an elitist forum, okay, where you will have a social credit score. You will eventually no longer have money, and all your goods that you are allowed to have that will be issued to you will be based upon your social credit score or
Mhm.
ESG score. Okay.
Yeah. I'm not going to do well with that.
No, it's not. And they're pushing this and pushing this. And there's a lot of corporations, major corporations, that are literally buying into this because if they don't and it does take off, they're going to be dismantled, essentially. So there's a lot of these corporations, huge corporations, that are backing this and promoting it and coming off that it's a good thing. And if you look at a lot of the corporations that actually partner with WEF, it is a scary, scary list.
Yeah. It's when I was looking through the 15-minute cities, it was amazing the things that were on the WEF website and the groups that were aligned and cross pollinating. And it's something that I find they do the same thing that we see very often with the far left here in the United States. Like they have 15 different organizations that are comprised of the exact same leadership, like Citizen Action, Progressive Leaders of Tomorrow, Indivisible, New York, the Democratic Socialists of America, Veterans Against War, all these different groups, and they have all these little groups. They're all the same people. The same people are exactly in charge of all of these groups. It's meant to make you think that there is so much more impetus and much more popularity behind these ideas. And when you break it down and you actually look through it, it's like, no, these are all the same people. It's like the same dozen people doing everything. They're lying to you. It makes it sound like it's big, like it's, everyone's on board. No, they're not. It's the same 12 people. It's crazy.
Well, the thing is, okay, I think when we first started doing this, I started talking about the article that's put forth by WEF. You will own nothing, be happy.
Yeah.
And if you look at many of the strategies that they put forth, that is exactly what they are trying to do. And when we talk about equity and various other things that they are trying to push forward, the only way that you're going to be able to, like I've said before, the only way that you can establish equity is if everybody has nothing.
Yep.
It's the only way to create equity. Okay. And there is no true equality. Okay. When we talk about equality, we talk about equality under the law.
Yeah.
Okay. Because there's always going to be inequalities. Okay. There's going to be inequalities in intelligence. There's going to be inequalities in finances. There's going to be inequalities in upbringing. There's going to be inequalities. I mean, you name it. There's inequalities.
It's life. That's
Oh,
just life.
okay.
Yeah.
I mean, if everybody was exactly equal, we'd be nothing but robots.
Yeah. We'd be a bunch of clones.
Okay. That's what equal. That's what true equality is. That's also what true equity is. Is everybody is a robot.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So when the founders were talking about every man being created equal, okay, they are created equal, i.e., they are considered equal under the law. And back then, obviously, blacks weren't considered equal under the law. Okay. But citizens of the United States were supposed to be treated equal under the law, regardless of social status, etc.
Right.
And we've evolved from that.
Mhm.
And now we have where all races are equal under the law, all genders are equal under the law.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We try to claim that there's an inequality in the United States. Yes, there is inequality in the United States.
Same as
Michael
anywhere
and
else.
I are not equal.
No, and we shouldn't be. We should never be.
Okay. If we were equal, we would both have the same house. We both drive the same car. We would both have the same bank account, same money in our bank accounts, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. That is not equality.
No, that's slavery.
Well, yeah.
That's my way of looking at it. Is that, to me, when you have that lack of diversity, that lack of freedom, that lack of choice, that lack of independence, to me, that's the definition of slavery.
Now, where true equality is, and what the founders were driving for when they said all men are created equal, is the fact that we are each giving equal opportunities to make our own individual choices.
Pursuit of happiness.
Okay. Even back then, and even though how atrocious slavery was, slaves still had the freedom of choice. They could choose to either do the work or not do the work. If they didn't do the work, then they suffered the consequences of getting beat. But they had that choice. They had the freedom to make those choices. Okay. And they chose based upon their knowledge, their experiences, what they thought was the better choice for them at the time. Okay, yeah, they were forced labor and so forth. They were raped, all these other atrocities of slavery. But there's still, regardless of how hard their masters tried, they could not take away a slave's right to choose. That is an inherent right. Okay, they couldn't take that away from them. Okay, now again, like I said, slaves would make choices that were the most beneficial, i.e., they would go out and work almost work themselves to death in order to avoid getting beaten to death.
Mhm.
Okay, they would make that choice. But again, they still had the freedom of choice. Okay, just like with slave revolts and slave uprisings, that was them exercising their rights to defend themselves.
Mhm.
Okay, there are certain inherent rights that, regardless of how hard we try or how hard others try, that cannot be taken away from us. Even prisoners, incarcerated, even in solitary confinement, they still have the freedom of choice. Their choices may be limited, but they still have the freedom of choice. They can either comply and eventually get out of solitary confinement, or they can choose not to comply and stay in solitary
Yeah.
confinement. They have the opportunity to choose whether or not they're going to eat.
Right.
Okay. Now, eventually, on hunger strikes, that's happened. When hunger strikes were a big thing in this country, where feeding tubes were forced on.
Yeah.
Okay. But for the most part, all of us have that freedom. We have freedom to make our own choices. And we make choices on whether or not we are going to allow government to provide everything for us or whether we are going to provide for ourselves and become self sufficient. And right now, I see a lot of our country that is wanting government to provide everything for us. And a lot of these initiatives and stuff that are being pushed forth by WEF are exactly that, where government is providing for you. Okay, instead of you being self reliant. The caveat on this and the real problem with this is whenever government provides for you, government controls you.
Yeah.
Okay, because if they want to control you, all they have to do is withhold what they're providing.
Yeah. That's the problem with dependence on government. What the government gives, government absolutely can take.
Mm-hmm. And that's the whole thing with this. You'll own nothing and like and be happy. Well, a big part of that is by owning nothing, it means you are completely dependent upon someone else to provide your basic necessities, your food, your clothing, your shelter. All those are provided by somebody else, and you are completely dependent upon them. Okay, these mile square cities, these 15-minute cities that they're talking about. Again, that's another one of those situations and scenarios where you are relying upon somebody else to provide for you.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay. And thing is if you don't comply with what whoever's providing for you, all they have to do is withhold. Okay. And you can only go so long without food. You can only go so long without water. You can only go so long without shelter. Okay. And eventually you will end up complying. You will get hungry enough, you will get thirsty enough that you will submit. Okay. And these programs, these 15-minute cities, these you'll own nothing and like it, these vertical cities that we've talked about tonight, those are all schemes to make you dependent. And once you are dependent, you are controlled.
It's cradle to grave government. Government at every step. True enough.
Okay.
It's
So
terrifying.
I think we've rattled that cage enough for tonight.
Yeah.
Okay. And I keep saying it. The only way that we can change this as Americans is to become involved.
Mhm.
We are a country of we the people. In other words, we the people determine what our government is.
Yes.
However, if we're going to be a government of the people, by the people, and for the people, then guess what? The people must be involved. Otherwise, we don't have a government of the people. We don't have a government for the people. We don't have a government by the people. Okay?
Yeah.
The key word is the people. And the people are you and I, everyone watching this, all your friends. We are the people. That's why the Constitution starts off, we the people.
Mhm.
It is I'm I'm mad blank for what word I'm trying to say. It is mandatory that
Mhm.
the people be involved. Okay.
Yeah.
And when the people aren't involved, our government starts to fail. And that's what we are seeing. That's why we have the division in this country that we're seeing today. It's because people aren't involved. We're expecting the parties to take care of it. Okay. And whether you support the Democrats or whether you support the Republicans, guess what?
Yeah.
Every election system, every election cycle, each side says, well, only if our party was in, then everything would be better. It hasn't worked. It has not worked. Okay. Why? Because we're expecting the party to take care of us. No, the party doesn't take care of us. Get
No.
involved, become educated, learn about the issues, and start taking an active role in your own governance.
Yeah.
Okay. Plain and simple.
Pick one subject, one issue that's important to you. Start there. One thing, whatever it is, gun control, abortion, I don't know, feeding the homeless, whatever it is, whatever is your thing, pick that one thing, study that one thing, get involved in that one thing, make a difference in that one thing, let your voice be heard, and go from there. And if everyone did that, we'd be so much better off.
And quit expecting the politicians to do things for you. Because guess what? They're only interested in themselves.
Oh, yeah.
They're only interested in making it to the next election and getting reelected. That's all they care about.
Yep.
That's all they care about.
Chuck Schumer's a great example of that. When does Chuck Schumer show up amongst the people? Whenever it's an election year and he needs votes. He shows up when he needs to get some positive attention so that he can go and in the next election cycle and go, see, I'm a people person. Here's a picture of me with people at an event that was specifically political in its content, that was meant to be an advantage for me. That's it. He doesn't just show up. He doesn't go to the store. He doesn't just walk around his neighborhood. No, because he has an agenda. His agenda is making sure he's always in power.
And then I want each of us to really think about it and think about the last time their representative was actually in the town or city that they live in a forum where you could actually ask questions of them.
Yeah, it doesn't happen very often. Does not happen a whole lot.
Okay. So if you think you're being representative, think again. Okay. We can change it. It's up to us. But if you don't want to, we can keep going with the status quo, and you can see what it's doing to this country.
Yeah. Indeed.
Okay. And that's one of the things here at the Liberties First Foundation that we are all about. It's about getting people involved at the local level, at every level, getting people involved. And the easiest way to get involved is to start in your communities. Start working in your communities. Okay, start learning, start looking at what you can do to get your community self-sufficient. Because once you have your community self-sufficient, guess what? The state and the federal government can no longer control your community because you're no longer reliant upon them for certain funds or for certain services. You start there and we can change this country. And if you don't want to get involved, you don't want to do so, then support organizations like the Liberty First Foundation that are involved. Okay, we're right now in the middle of our membership drive. Okay, for 2023, for $15 a year, you can help support actions that we are taking on your behalf. Okay, we are working on, as we raise funds and so forth, we are working on multiple initiatives in order to start driving us back to restoring the Constitution of the United States and restoring a constitutional government, which we have not had for a long time. Okay, but we can only do so much on our own. We need your help. Okay, and the ways that you can help, I've laid out many times on this show. You can start by getting involved in your communities. That's one way you can help. Another way that you can help is by supporting Liberty First Foundation by purchasing a membership. You can also help by spreading the message of what we're saying. Okay, if you don't like what we're saying, fine, don't share it. But if something that we say tonight resonates with you, share this live stream. Okay, go on, comment, join the comments. We've got a lot of people that have commented tonight, but the conversation doesn't have to end when the broadcast ends. The conversation can continue long after this goes. After we shut off the broadcast. Okay, it doesn't have to end there. So even after we're done with this live stream, take and share it to your friends. Share it to tell people about the Liberty First Foundation. Tell people about the Constitution. Okay, start there. Start conversations about the Constitution. Okay, it's simple. It's very simple. I want to thank everybody that's in the chat tonight. I want to thank all of our viewers. I want to thank all of our supporters, people in our Facebook groups and our YouTube channels and our subscribers. Without you guys, none of this would be possible. So thank you. We're going to see you again next week, just like we do every Friday night, 9 p.m. Eastern time. Invite your friends. Okay? Invite others to come and watch us. Invite them to join in the conversation with us. We'd be glad to have them. Until next week, I'm Mike Marshall, co-founder of the Liberty First Foundation. Where each week we have Michael Vaz from No Soundbites Allowed with us. And I want to thank you, Michael.
Always.
Do you have any last comments?
Dal reminded me of one little quick thing, and that is the proposed legislation, the election reform bill that we had hoped to get out. I do know for a fact that it has been received by Mark Molinaro.
Okay.
And so he is reviewing that, and we may or may not see something from there, but we do know that he's one of the first members of Congress that have received it at this time.
Okay, nice.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and that's something else. Okay, and I posted that on our website. I have to dig out the link. I'll have to dig up the link and I'll have to get that posted, and we'll start posting that as part of our show. This is something that you can put forth at your local election commissions.
Mm-hmm.
You can put forth in your states, and this is something that if we start pushing it together as citizens, it's something that we can get initiated. It's something that we can get done. But again, when it's only 2 or 3 voices, not much is going to get done. But when we got thousands of voices, guess what? People start to listen. Okay. We'll see y'all next week. Thank you, everybody. Good night.